supporters of Dave's Tackle Box.
Hello, good evening, welcome to Dave's Tackle Box. It is Sunday the 31st of March 2013. It's Easter Sunday, so I hope the Easter Bunny left you something nice. Tonight's show, we've had a sort of late change of schedule on what we're going to do tonight. I'm going to be joined by a couple of guests tonight to look at some more developments from that place we've come to know and love, Brussels. So I'm going to play the titles and we'll get cracking. At least I'm trying to go live. There we go. Press the wrong button. Good start. Okay, so as I said at the top there, there was going to be a show that involved sort of GGTS bits and things like that tonight. But we've had a development in the last couple of days that follows on very neatly from the discussion we're having on VT Talk on Wednesday night. So we're going to dedicate a large part of this show to discussion of that. And if I flip cameras here, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. This is a document that has been published by the Committee on the Internal Market and Consumer Protection. So this is part of the European Parliament, as you can see by the logo on the top of this document here. We mentioned it sort of briefly on Andy Sutton's show last night. You saw a bit with Dave Dorn just saying, you know, we just got hold of this and we're starting to digest it. Well, we've digested it a bit more now. We're not particularly enthralled with what we're reading in here. But I thought probably the best thing to do is if I kick this off by just going through what this document is and some of the highlights from it. And by highlights, I mean the bits that relate to electronic cigarettes or may relate to electronic cigarettes, because it's not totally sort of it's a bit ambiguous in places. But let's have a quick flick through it. We'll get it up and then we'll get the lads in and see what their thoughts are. So the document is called a draft opinion, and it's come from the IMCO committee. Now, you might remember the IMCO committee was where we saw the Swedish guys talking about the snus and what have you. And these guys have considered the proposed revisions to the Tobacco Products Directive, and this is basically a list of amendments that they'd like to see made before the Health Commission push the TPD through, the revisions through. I've been through it with a highlighter pen, as you can see. There's quite a lot of it, but like I say, I'll try and keep it down to the bits that I thought were worthy of comment. So, just checking which camera I've got. The whole idea of this justification that they've put together talks about the reasoning for the TPD, you know, being the reduction of the number of smokers in the European Union. Their angle on it, IMCO's angle, amongst other things, I've just pulled out a little quote here. That they look at it and they propose some amendments, quote, in order to improve the functioning of the internal market. I said eternal market then, maybe that's better. I don't know. But They're worried that certain tobacco products should not be favoured over others. They've scrapped some stuff. They're suggesting that things like, remember the bit about the slim cigarettes, and they thought that it might appeal to people who are trying to lose weight or something equally ridiculous. But they're saying that's rubbish and they should be regulated the same as others and not banned. So there is some sort of pushing back in this document. But then you get to the bits that are probably more relevant to us and what we're going to be talking about tonight. So if I just hold up to that camera, I'm starting reading at the bottom of page 3 if you've been as daft as I have and printed out this 32-page document. But let me start. I'll read this bit to you. It sets it up nicely. It says, as 70% of smokers start before the age of 18, the main focus of the proposal is to limit access of tobacco products to children and young adults. Seems rational. Your rapporteur, that's the person who's put this document together on behalf of IMCO, is of the view that cross-border distance sale of tobacco products should not be allowed, as there is no possibility to effectively verify the age of a potential buyer. Therefore, it is the constant danger that a tobacco product could have been purchased by a minor. Now, we'll be discussing that point in a bit of detail shortly, because there's little hidden barbs in there. Next paragraph. Nicotine-containing products, as for example e-cigarettes, contain toxic chemicals and tobacco-specific components suspected of being dangerous to consumers. Moreover, analyses in the field show that e-cigarette cartridges labelled as containing no nicotine in many cases do in fact contain low levels of nicotine. Like a tomato then, but I'll ignore that. We'll come back to that. For that reason, all nicotine-containing products should be subject to control. Otherwise, products with levels of nicotine concentration just below the proposed thresholds could reach the market without any authorisation. As indicated above, not only a concentration of nicotine is relevant, but also the mixture of all substances as such. Consumers indicate as well that they mainly use e-cigarettes to quit smoking. And we'll be talking about that. Bad English here, which I'll correct. Which suggests that e-cigarettes are perceived as a medicinal product. Your rapporteur, proposes therefore to authorise all nicotine-containing products in accordance with the directive on the Community Code relating to medicinal products for human use, 2001/83/EC. I've seen that reference to that document a lot in the last couple of weeks. For the purposes of being crystal clear, they want to do away with the 4 milligram threshold and declare all electronic cigarettes as medicines. Final paragraph that I'm going to read out for the moment. Since some markets might be more affected by the proposed directive than others, your rapporteur is of the opinion that it is necessary to introduce a longer transitional period for tobacco products, nicotine-containing products and herbal products for smoking. So they're proposing that we should get a bit longer to get our house in order once the e-cigs are declared medicines, basically. So what they mean is a slightly longer period of time than was originally suggested to gain your marketing authorisations. And we have some news on that, so some rumours that we'd like to share as well coming up a bit later. The document then, and I'll just let you have a look, it then goes into the detail of enacting all that. So where we had references to flavourings in NCPs or nicotine-containing products, those references they're proposing they are deleted. I'm not sure if you can see that, but where it used to say all these words, they want that deleted. That's their proposed amendment. And specifically, this is the one that is of interest to us, I think. The proposal used to read, the authorisation takes into account the nicotine content of the product in question. subjecting all nicotine-containing products whose nicotine content equals or exceeds the content of a nicotine-containing product previously authorised under Directive 2001/83 EC to the same legal framework, clarifies the legal situation, blah, blah, blah. And they've actually decided to remove that text because they really are removing the scope for non-medical electronic cigarettes. If it has any trace of nicotine in it at all, and I mean that's an interesting subject in its own right. Technically a tomato could be categorised as a nicotine containing product, then it will be a medicine if these amendments are accepted and if these amendments are voted for in the Parliament. Now, we should elaborate, as it says on the front of this document, it is a draft opinion of the IMCO committee. So this has not formally been handed to Envy for consideration yet, except that if I've got a copy, they have, right? So it will reflect the discussions that the IMCO committee have had. This is basically the sum of their thoughts and what they feel they should be contributing to the debate. And yeah, so I think you can see, therefore, that there's some potentially quite dramatic impacts on what we're fighting against. On the face of it, it does not appear to be good news. Those people who thought that they might try carry on with 4 milligram juice I've just had that option whipped away from them, it seems. So that's going to be the course of our discussion for the next little while. So first thing I'm going to do then is I'm going to welcome the lads and let them say hi. So we'll go to Dave Dorn first, and we'll get Dave on camera. Good evening, Dave.
Good evening, Dave. How are you doing?
I'm not bad at all. Trust you've had a reasonable Easter, apart from this, of course.
Well, it was going to be an absolutely delightful Easter. This has somewhat soured the milk, but it's been a good day. I've thoroughly enjoyed my little self cooking for my darling daughter and my grandson, so it's all been good.
Well, that's good to hear. I'll flick across and we can say hi to Tim now. So let's get you on the screen there, Tim. How you doing, mate?
Not too bad, not too bad, not too bad. It's been a good day today up until I started reading through all this stuff. Again, I've been cooking all day, having a few glasses of wine, enjoying Easter.
Did you turn your mic down by any chance?
No, not changed it at all.
Interesting.
Just muted it.
Interesting.
I can shuffle further forward.
It's getting better now.
Yeah,
you're a lot quieter than you were. Put it that way.
It could be Skype.
I think that is better now. So we can hear you anyway. That's the main thing. Right. So let's get all three of us on the screen there and figure out how we're going to go at this. I mean, okay, this was a shock, wasn't it? I mean, I watched that IMCO session. I saw the Swedish guys going on about snus. I saw the sort of almost light-hearted sort of atmosphere that was going in there. And I was rather hopeful that they might kind of throw some kind of spanner in the works and help us out a bit, IMCO. But I really didn't anticipate that they were going to say, nah, chuck the rest in as well. Dave, what do you reckon?
I must admit it has kind of taken me a little bit by surprise, and the ramifications of these, because each individual one is an amendment. The document as you've printed it out, which people will have seen on screen, it's all little boxes, and every time there's a little box, that is another amendment.
Yeah.
And each one will be discussed and voted on separately. Of course, where one amendment deletes a whole host of other paragraphs, then that's discussed as one. But what it means, the worrying part, is if they decide against accepting they're all going to be medicines amendment, but they accept, therefore, that e-cigs are going to be within the purview of the Tobacco Products Directive, then web sales of e-cigs will be outlawed. There'll be no web sales of e-cigs. Or if they go the other way, then effectively e-cigs are all medicines, and then yes, there'll be web sales, but not until there's marketing authorizations for them. So it's a bit of a catch-22 situation, is that one. It's the barb you were referring to earlier. They're damned if they do, they're damned if they don't. Well, we're damned if they do.
We
and
are,
we're
yeah.
damned if they
Let's be
don't.
clear.
Yeah.
I don't suppose they'll lose a lot of sleep over it.
I don't think so. I mean, there is a potential loophole in this any level of nicotine thing, because the Maldives went through that a short while ago when they tried a similar sort of thing, ended up getting dragged through the courts and having to change everything around, because what they have defined as being a nicotine-containing product, as Chat has been pointing out, quite volubly, it has to be said, brings in tomatoes, aubergines, potatoes, all of the members of the Solanaceae family. So there's a little bit of a loophole there that the legal beagles can attach their thousands and thousands of pounds a day onto and perhaps be able to battle with. But I have the horrible feeling that the rabid antis in envy are going to jump straight on this and go, yes, great idea, make them medicines. So,
well, that's got to be the concern, hasn't it? Because, you know, if you're charged with getting this through, by saying, we'll make them medicines, basically just gets them out of the way, doesn't it?
Well, basically what it does is it kind of devolves the decision-making away from envy. Once they've done that and palmed it off onto the other directive, the Medicines Directive, they can more or less wash their hands of it and let the Medicines Directive people take care of it. It then becomes a medicinal thing. And it simplifies their steamrollering through the Tobacco Products Directive in all of the other areas where they're talking about plain packaging and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So it's got to be quite attractive to the rabid anti-smokers on the Envy Committee, and one can but hope that common sense prevails with the folks that have got some common sense over there. And I've got no intention of trying to enumerate how many of those there are.
What you mean is you haven't found any?
No, there's one or two. There's one or two over there.
There you go, you just enumerated it. So, Paxman's got nothing on me.
Count them on the fingers of one elbow.
Tim, I'm going to chuck it across to you, mate. Did you see this coming?
I didn't at all. I mean, the way I see it is it's a bit of a cop out, really, because it just makes things very, very easy for them, just to make it go away, which is what it's all about. I mean, it's putting the lid back on Pandora's box. All of a sudden, the e-cig's not a problem. It's going to be taken care of as a medicinal product, and it becomes somebody else's problem at that point, doesn't it? So it just makes it far too easy for them, and they don't have to worry about dealing with it. I mean, it wasn't something I envisaged seeing at all.
There's an element. I think you're right. I mean, it could be just a good way of brushing this into somebody else's court, really, couldn't it? But it's a little bit inconsistent though, because if you go through the document and look at the stuff that doesn't relate to NCPs, things like packaging and the slim cigarettes and stuff like that, they're kicking back against some of that stuff as well. So it's some of this supports the tobacco industry, I would say, and so it certainly protects a couple of. They were going to ban those slim cigarettes, weren't they? And they're saying now they should be left in, and just have warning labels like all the others.
Well, I think that's possibly because somebody in the IMCO committee did point out that they were accused of defining a banana as being straight, and I well remember all of that lot going on, and that they already have a definition for a cigarette, which is to do with length, and that they don't want to bring diameter into it because. And
that's what I think. Because I think you've hit the nail on the head. What I see here is. IMCO trying to actually agree on a set of rules that are easier to police.
Yes.
So if we get rid of those sort of irritating NCPs that we don't really know how to deal with, and then we actually keep those cigarettes in there but regulate them in the same way, I think that's basically what they're going for. They're going for a simpler set of rules to enforce, maybe.
Well, yes, I mean, Gillis in chat did mention that there had been some talk in one of the two committees about tobacco-derived products. And I believe that got kicked into touch more or less as they were talking about it, because, again, this would complicate what they're trying to do. And my initial thought is that they are desperate to get these revisions to the Tobacco Products Directive through before the next Parliament.
Well, they've said as much, haven't they? They've said as much.
Yes, and they've got to do that. Otherwise, it puts a delay of 18 months to 2 years on what it is they're trying to do.
It really is quite scary. Now, just on the subject of timescales, that final paragraph, I'll just read it again because it's very short. Since some markets might be more affected by the proposed directive than others, your rapporteur is of the opinion that it is necessary to introduce a longer transitional period for tobacco products, nicotine-containing products, and herbal products for smoking.
Yes.
So, have we had any suggestion what that might be?
36 months from the date of enactment is the annotation on the version of the draft that I have.
Right.
Which is 4 years less than they gave to the herbal products people. The herbal products
That's right, they got
directive.
7 years, didn't they? Yeah.
They had 7 years. And people may well, if you've been watching Vapor Trails since we started, you might well remember, I think it's February 2 years ago, Perpetua from the All About Forum came and gave us her experience, because we'd kind of seen this coming along. And we saw what they'd done with the herbal products, and it looks as though they intend to do the same here if all of this goes through, which basically means that they set out their rules and regulations and they say, right, you've got 3 years to get marketing authorization. If you don't, on that day, 3 years' time, that's it, shut us down, products off the shelf, only authorized product is there. And I think a lot of people in the herbal products market thought, oh, well, it's great, we've got 7 years, we don't need to do anything. But unfortunately, they discovered that when the shutters came down, the shutters came down. Because again, there was the comment made in chat that, you know, might they reverse this a little bit later on? And I think it's safe to say the EU is not particularly well known for reversing decisions it's already made. And certainly if, you know, past performance is no guarantee of future performance, but certainly with the Herbal Products Directive, absolutely not. And I know for an absolute certain fact that places like Holland and Barrett have lost millions of turnover because of that, and purely and simply because the costs of achieving marketing authorizations for the products that they had, which, let's face it, the stuff you can go and pick in the woods, most of it.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, they've just been priced out of the market, and it's been placed firmly, fairly and squarely into big pharma's lap. So you want to go and buy a tincture of witch hazel now, and it's produced by GlaxoSmithKline or Johnson & Johnson or any of the others. You don't
Dave,
get
hold that thought, because that's taking us into an area. This whole issue of what authorization looks like and what it actually, how it's enacted is our next topic, and we'll do it straight after this break.
Okie doke.
Cloud9 Vaping, sponsors of Dave's Tap Box. Cloud9 Vaping, sponsors of Dave's Tap Box.
And welcome back. So just before the break there, we were talking about the fact that if these proposals go through, all e-cigs will need a marketing authorization. And let's be honest, we're talking about the liquid that goes in them. These numpties in Brussels don't appreciate that, but obviously we can talk about what it will really look like. If these proposals aren't accepted, these amendments, and they don't go through for any reason, then it'll be everything over 4 milligrams that will need a marketing authorisation. So, Dave, you were giving a cracking example there of the herbal medicines a couple of years ago when that went through and what was involved. And so, some of the numbers, I remember we ran a little piece and we did a little bit of research, and I think like the starting price for a marketing authorisation, if you look at the MHRA's website, is a couple of $100,000, isn't it? And then you have things like trial costs and stuff on top of that. So, you know, conservatively, you're starting at $500,000 per product, and in our case, that would be a flavour or a concentration of e-liquid and combination of each. So your RY4 18 milligram would require a different marketing authorisation to both your RY4 36 milligram and your RY5 18 milligram, for example. So, you know, now if we're looking at the usual sort of pattern, the MHRA sort of quoted costs on their website, to put those 3 juices on the market, somebody's got to stump up £1.5 million and go through the trial process, the clinical trial process, which, does that take 2 years or something daft?
It can do, but that's not what the rumour mill is telling us, though.
Well, I know that. That's why I mentioned it.
The rumour mill is that the MHRA, and this has come from, I can't name sources, but it was semi-announced at the Science for the Research into Nicotine and Tobacco's annual general meeting in Boston, that the MHRA is likely to take a light touch approach to this, and that their costings, their headline costing, will be $30,000 per product,
which is a lot less than 500,000.
It absolutely is. And it's also saying that they won't require full clinical tests. They would only require the pharmacokinetics of that particular product, and that there would be a simplified application, much in line with what there is for what they call a simple herbal product, which is not a herbal medicine because it's a tiered kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's, if that rumour is to be believed, that's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. And in terms of flavouring, it actually gives everybody a little bit of a get out, because the easiest thing to do would be to get marketing authorisations for unflavoured in, let's say, 36 milligram.
Yeah.
And then people can buy whatever to flavour it from other sources, as long as they're not marketed as being for e-cigs, but that's easily got round. PG's available, VG's available, so it puts it in the ranks of the affordable for the manufacturers, but it also necessitates a whole different kind of marketing tier system, if you like, than we currently have, and would put out of business an awful lot of the really small juice blenders, the boutique ones. They'd more or less be straight out of the window.
Yeah, it would. Let's just throw that one to Tim. Tim, I know you're not a manufacturer, so it's a little bit unfair, you know. But I mean, currently, it strikes me there are 2 types of flavoured juice providers. There's the real big boys, the Dekangs, the Hang Sengs. Then you come down a tier, don't you, to you know, sort of UK or EU or US based juice manufacturers. I mean, somebody has got to get a license and a marketing authorization for these products. And if in the UK, let's say that, what sort of impact do you imagine? I know you won't have any solid numbers, but what sort of impact do you imagine a 30k license would have on your juice prices? I'm guessing it won't get cheaper.
No, it's not going to make it cheaper. I mean, it's going to put the prices up. But I mean, the inevitability with any sort of authorisations is the price is going to go up anyway. I mean, I thought about this a little while back, and I thought that perhaps it would be like a system where a unflavoured juice was authorised, and then people were allowed to either cut it down or add a flavour in. And I mean, I'm fairly sure that the UK companies will continue to put the flavouring on the shelves for that sort of thing anyway. But that I see the prices going up. I mean, I'm not sure sort of on numbers or anything there, but I mean the prices would definitely go up because obviously everybody's got to get their 30k back. But if it was sort of pushing, I'm going to sort of flip it around a bit. If it was pushing people into a DIY situation, I think a lot of people would actually stop using the e-cig anyway, because of the amount of faff involved in it. People just want to be able to buy the flavour off the shelf.
I think you've
hit
a cracking point there, frankly. I think you're right. I mean, your sort of cigar-like sort of style of disposables and the things that you're picking up, petrol stations and everything, they're not going to be interested in all that kind of faff, I wouldn't have thought. And of course, it does make the assumption that the when they actually come to implement this, that you know, our existing retailers, whether they be websites or bricks and mortar shops, are going to be allowed to sell them, and you won't have to go to the chemist, of course.
Oh, they're talking about OTC. So everything's over the counter, so it would be available wherever NRT is available, because it would conform to NRT. Basically, that has a marketing authorization for over-the-counter sales, and it now has an indication for, believe it or not, tobacco harm control, or tobacco harm reduction, I should say. I'm sorry, the control word keeps on coming up because I've read it so many times in this document.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're talking about, you know, there's now an indication via the MHRA for tobacco harm reduction using NRT products, as in they were only really licensed for use up to 12 weeks. Now it's indefinite. And they say e-cigs falling into exactly the same category. And again, it's probably because, and I'm coming back to that piece that was in the document about people using them to quit. I've been banging on about this for donkey's ages. You can't use that phrase and expect the people in authority to understand what you mean. I know everybody means, I don't light cigarettes anymore, I smoke. I wish it had been called something else. I wish we'd called it, I don't know, tiddling. You know, if you'd been a tiddler while you were using fags, you're still tiddling. But everybody got this, oh, I've quit, it's been a year since I last had a fag, and they've picked up on that, and we're getting smacked with it now.
Well, I've got to weigh in, and I had a little sort of moan about this on VT Talk on Wednesday. You know, people do say that they've quit. You know, we've tried very hard to sort of get people to understand that, you know, it doesn't matter what you think you've done. If you keep saying it out loud, somebody's going to take your word for it. And I mean, let's be honest, a lot of people believe that they are quitting smoking, they're giving up smoking, and we've been through why that is. It's understandable. It boils down to the fact that nobody that matters makes the distinction between quitting smoking and quitting nicotine use. You know, it doesn't give you too much pleasure to say I told you so when what we predicted coming around came around, really, does it?
No,
I mean,
not
Dave,
at all.
a question I ask an awful lot of people is, you know, I've got a few people that have been long-time vapers now. They've been over a year, and when they come in to buy their stuff, I ask the question: if I was to take this away from you now, where would you be going? Would you still be not smoking? And the answer is always, I would be straight across the road to the little shop over there, buying 20 fags if I couldn't get what I want from you. And those 20 are people that have been using e-cigs for over a year.
Yeah, I'm sure Dave will agree and add to that.
I'd be straight up the corner shop for 60 Marlies. It's that simple. And that would be to get me through until I could get to the wholesalers and buy 400.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm refusing not to think about this at the moment, but I suspect I would do the same.
I'm sorry, but I've got to bring this up, and I hate to have to do this, but Russell Lord has just typed into chat, they are giving up smoking in big letters. Yes, Russ, we know they're not lighting cigarettes anymore. The problem is that for the last 60, 70, 80 years, anybody who said that they're giving up smoking is actually giving up nicotine. There's been no other choice. It's only in the last 20 years that NRT's been available. And unfortunately, the people in authority equate giving up smoking with becoming nicotine abstinent, and that's what they're hitting us with now. It might be true as far as we're concerned, but we can't afford to say that. Otherwise, this is what happens.
Well, let's look at what happens. Let's look specifically at what happens. It says, let's find it. Can't find the line now. I can't find the line. Typical. Consumers indicate as well that they mainly use e-cigarettes to quit smoking. That suggests e-cigarettes are perceived as a medicinal product.
And that...
You know, it doesn't give a damn what it says in the dictionary, okay? To the EU, to the, what do they call it? The Code Relating to Medicinal Products for Human Use 2001 83 EC. If you are claiming smoking cessation, you're using a medicine. It doesn't give... Nobody gives a damn what we think about it and how logical that is. So if you want to keep on saying it, fine. What can I add?
I mean, you know, we said this donkeys ages ago, that there was a clause in the MHRA's documentation and in the EU's documentation that if enough people said it was a medicine, it was a medicine. If it was generally perceived to be a medicine, it's a medicine. And that's exactly what they're using in this amendment. I really hope it doesn't get passed. I really hope it doesn't get passed.
See, the problem is that this is okay. There's discussion going on UK vapors at the moment about that specific point, you know, and obviously on UK vapors, and I dare say every other forum, people realise the difference, and they realise the consequence of saying that I'm using these for cessation. But you can't refute the point that they've made here, because the reality is that if you pass somebody in the street using an e-cig, they think you're quitting.
Yes.
If you talk to anybody who's new to an internet forum, they think they're quitting until you explain to them you can't really say that, because, you know. The reality is that I don't think that statement's wrong. It doesn't speak for me, and it doesn't speak for a large percentage of the audience of this show, I suggest. But for the 700,000 in the UK, what is it, 3 million sort of e-cig users in across the EU member states, I wouldn't be surprised if 90% of them are saying they've done it to quit smoking. I don't see how we can argue with that logic. We have to find something else.
It's pretty much inescapable. It's very true, but it's another barb that they've stuck through the lip of the fish that is the e-cig user, and they can reel us in that way, left, right and centre. It's a great shame, but I mean, bottom line on it is, as we said on Wednesday, that particular horse has already bolted. There's nothing we can do about it now.
Sadly, it is true.
But yeah, we've
the quit word. Actually, the quit word is the word I hear every day.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do.
I mean, and I do explain they've exchanged the way they ingest their nicotine for something different. But as far as they're concerned, the general public have quit smoking.
I think that's a good place to take our second break. When we come back, I want to sort of pick out a point relating to something that Linda McCavan said early on about, like, the number of reports of problems with electronic cigarettes and why we need this regulation to keep us safe. I am, of course, referring to the RAPEX stuff, and we'll discuss it straight after this.
Cloud9 Vaping, sponsors of Dave's Tap Box.
iVapour and iVapour Elixir, based in Yorkshire, for your e-cig needs. That's iVapour.co.uk and iVapour-elixir.co.uk. iVapour and iVapour-elixir.co.uk, proud sponsors of VapourTrails.tv.
sponsors of Dave's Tackle Box.
And welcome back. So, Dave, you were doing your best to do a Sav there, weren't you, and scour chat?
I'm telling you now, I've got a new respect for Sav. Not that I didn't have respect for her before, but dear God, her eyes must be like a hawk. And the team that's backing her up between them, I just can't keep track of what's going on. There's bits and bobs I keep on picking up on, so I'm sorry I'm nowhere near as good as Sav at doing any of this. I'm doing my best. But the point was made, and I've got no idea who said it, that this is typical political manoeuvring to divide the consumers, if you like, and then conquer, to divide the community that we have. And they've done that. They've to a large degree, they've divided an awful lot of e-cig users away from the smokers.
Yeah.
And Forrest's brought that up God knows how many times, and I can't say I blame them. And now they're going to be dividing off those people who, rightly or wrongly, are using e-cigs in order to become nicotine abstinent. I'm choosing my words very carefully here, away from those of us who have no intention of packing nicotine in. And they're just hammering these divisions in, and we are going to have to pull everybody together. And they did say, why don't we just brand ourselves, all of ourselves, as recreational nicotine users and come together as one body to fight the Tobacco Products Directive? And from me, that gets 2 very big thumbs up. We've got to fight together, because divided we will fall. And whether you like it or not, that is the case.
Do you think? How likely do you think it is?
What, that will fall?
That we can unite?
I think it's very likely. I mean, the bottom line on it is, I would think better than 99%, 99.9% of people currently using e-cigs were smokers, were using lit tobacco, were inhaling the fumes of lit tobacco. And, you know, it's kind of like being a Freemason. Once you're a Freemason, you're a Freemason for the rest of your life. End of story. And it's the same with all sorts of other things. You know, I've never understood the reformed smoker thing. Why suddenly somebody that was stood outside with you having a fag at a cricket match or a football match, all of a sudden
some kind
you
of
go to the
pariah,
house
yeah.
and you can't come in. You're a filthy, dirty, horrible, rotten smoker.
Completely
and you
agree.
kind of think, yeah, if your mother can embroider, get her to stitch that.
Word on that one, Tim?
Well, I totally agree there. I mean, as far as us all putting together, that is something that we've all been working towards for quite some time now. And you know, it does need to be done. There needs to be one voice to represent everybody who believes in what they're doing here with the e-cig, and it's just getting everybody together to do it. And the worst sort of hypocrites of the smoking are the ones that have given up. I mean, I've got friends that have been giving up for 10 years, and they still take the mickey out of me every time they see me with my great big appliance, and say, well, why don't you just give that up as well? Of course, that's another thing. Well, you've been using that for a while now. When are you going to give that up? Answer is, I'm not. It's as simple as that. It's here to
Nicely
stay.
put. Right, okay. I've promised to play a little trailer for a vape meet that's coming up, and this will be the last time we play it because it's next weekend. It's the 7th of April. This is the South Coast Vapors. You've seen it a couple of times if you've been watching over the last couple of weeks. You're going to see it again, and when we come back, we're going to talk about this Rapex business. And welcome back. So get yourself down to the South Coast Vapors meet if you're in the area. I think I wasn't watching that as it played actually because we've got so much going on behind the scenes here at the moment. It's it's hard to watch what we're actually doing.
There's been some stuff brought up. A couple of really good examples. One was basically saying if you went out every Friday night, and I'm paraphrasing here, and I do apologise, but if you went out every Friday night and you're drinking flaming vodkas or flaming shots or whatever, and you decided that wasn't a good idea because the flames were a little bit dangerous and stood a chance of burning your lips, and you moved to cider, are you any less of a drinker? Worth thinking about.
Good point. Right, in the interests of moving along and covering the things we wanted to cover tonight, I want to bring up the subject of these RAPEX reports. Now, the background to this and why we're talking about this tonight. In one of the opening sort of salvos at an Envy hearing committee meeting a few weeks ago, Linda McCavan, the rapporteur for Envy, who's trying to push this through, made reference to some RAPEX reports which suggested, to paraphrase, that we needed regulation because there was stuff being sent out, that claimed to be zero nic and had nicotine in it and various other stuff. Now, following on from that, where one of our viewers, Very Boring, did a little bit of digging, a little bit of research, which was subsequently added to E&C, and they started a thread at forum.vaportrials.tv. And we promised that we'd have a look into this and have a discussion about it, and it was Dave that actually picked it up in the end. So I'm going to flick straight over to Dave, and the first thing I'm going to ask you, Dave, for the benefit of those that won't know, is what are the RAPEX reports?
When a car gets recalled because the brakes don't work or there's a nut loose on the accelerator pedal or something like that.
Yeah.
That recall, that report, that flaw gets filed away in the RAPEX system, and every week there's a report comes out that enumerates all of the various different reports and says what they are, and there are hundreds, and I mean hundreds, every month, from things as daft that seem as daft to me as a hoodie for a child under 3 that has strings hanging out of it. Apparently there's a danger of strangulation. Or a dress that has too long a thing going round the waist that ties at the back. Apparently things like that find their way into a RAPEX report. Right. And there are various different actions that can be taken, that can be pulled from the market compulsorily, or there's voluntary actions as well, and there's all sorts of bits and bobs.
Just a quickie, did you sort of pick up what the source of those things is normally? I mean, are they things that are like the various EU trading standards associations pick up, or are they reported by people?
It's all from trading standards.
Right. Okay. Cool.
So trading standards would receive a report from a concerned member of the public. And would go and seek it out, or they would be advised of a potential flaw by the manufacturer or distributor of a particular good. So, if it's Peugeot and there's something wrong with a Peugeot 307, which in actual fact that was one of the RAPEX reports, Peugeot would tell them and would issue a recall and tell, whoever they need in order to make things safe for people. So I went through all of that little lot, and there were 9 RAPEX reports. From Germany, from the UK, and from France. The ones in France related to mistaken labelling and a lack of, if you like, chip compliance, as we would know it in the UK. Right. And that was very similar in Germany, so that took up 4. So there were 4 RAPEX reports on that. The rest were mostly to do with the chargers that were delivered with kits not having the required clearance or the structural solidity. So the charger could potentially cause a user damage.
Didn't actually, but potentially could.
Exactly right. Yeah. And on all of these things, they have the number of incidents of people that have been injured, and there was nothing on any of the RAPEX reports that had anything to do with e-cigs, and I had to search all the way back to 2006 to find all 9 that were referenced. And in fact, you couldn't find them by searching for electronic cigarette. You had to search for cigarette.
Right. So it's fair to say, is it that Linda McCavan may have been over-egging the pudding a bit?
She might have been slightly economical with the truth,
Right,
as in
okay.
not telling all of it.
Okie dokie. So I mean, just to clarify, there was one report relating to nicotine content.
There was one report of a mislabeled zero nic that had 8 milligrams in.
Right. So that was a labelling error, basically.
Yes.
And there was nothing there that suggested that it warranted regulation as a medicine.
I wouldn't have said so, no. And actually, that one report of 8 milligram mislabeling on zero nic, that's the many, many instances of mislabeling that on nicotine being in stuff that should be zero nicotine that was referred to in the IMCO document.
Yes.
One, all from the same source. Ye gods and little fishes.
Yeah, there were the analyses in the field show that e-cigarette cartridges labelled as containing no nicotine in many cases do in fact contain low levels of nicotine. So that's basically a lie unless they're talking about something that didn't make the Rapex.
Well, what they're talking about is however many cases the bottles were put into for the batch that was mislabeled.
Right, I would have thought that was one case, wouldn't it? You know, so in terms of a Rapex case, I would say that's one, not many. So it's one instance, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you know, I mean, if anybody's in any doubt, you know, the sort of tactics they will use to get this stuff, because like I say, that stuff that I highlighted there, they keep holding up to the camera, to that camera, that you know that. To the uneducated, that sounds very, very reasonable. I'm going to be really mean to Tim here because I haven't prepared him for this question at all. But you hand these things out over the counter every day, and anything that's defective, they're going to hand back to you the next day, I would imagine. I mean, generally speaking, you know, what are the quality standards like?
Well, on juice, I mean, I just go along with what it says on the bottle, and I'm assuming that everything is correct on the bottle. As far as faulty items go, generally it's user error. I mean, the amount of Ego batteries that have been snapped in half by people putting them in the back pocket and sitting down on them is, I've lost count. And I mean, I've actually started repairing them for people now because I'm just fed up with seeing them.
I guess it's fair to say, though, is it, that if you know, if somebody sat on the battery and broke it, that's as likely to happen to an e-cig with an MA as it is to one if they bought it today.
It makes no difference. It could be anything. I mean, the other problems are with cigar-like style units where cartridges leak into the battery and kill the battery. That's an everyday occurrence. As far as chargers go, I mean, the chargers I sell, I've got a 12-month warranty. When they come back with them, they get another one if it goes wrong. So it's you know.
But you're not getting a huge amount of instances of this.
I'm not getting people coming back with, you know, with third-degree burns on their hands and mouths full of ulcers or anything like that. I'm not getting any really nasty stuff at all.
Yeah.
It's just 99% of the time it's you know, either a manufacturing fault that's caused the problem with the charger, or a user fault that's broken a battery, or cracked a tank or something like that. I mean, all of the stuff on the list there. I mean, I'm not getting any of that sort of thing.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
Exploding wall adapters.
Exactly. And the reason is that you basically self-regulate to a large extent.
Exactly.
You don't buy crap. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, okay. I think just looking at the time there now, we've got probably 4 or 5 minutes left. Is it worth dipping into chat there? I mean, there's one thing that I just, if there's a point to this show at all, it would be to smack home the disadvantages as we see them of medicinalising e-cigs or e-liquid or both. We don't know what the enforcement is going to be like, whether it is going to be OTC. Looks like the MHRA favour that. They're going to get in first. I don't think we actually stressed that point, did we, Dave? The MHRA are going to be in first. You know,
they are due to announce late April, mid-May, there or thereabouts, and NICE is slated to be announcing in June. They've been moved back a little. But yes, they're going to announce well ahead of the EU. That's the EU's not going to happen, I don't think, before September the 9th, although all of the amendments have to be tabled during the course of May.
Yeah, and we've got our fingers crossed that jury, the legal and jurisdiction committee, will get as many amendments in as well, because there is some stuff there that we know that ECITA have said there's some dodgy legal grounds for some of it. So hopefully they're going to table some amendments and slow it down a little bit more as well. But roll the clock forward a year, 2 years, when it's going to be, and everybody's finished on this. And if with or without the IMCO proposals implemented and included in the TPD, what's going to be the consequence for medicinalising this stuff and requiring an MA, even if it's a 30 grand one? Let's just make that point one more time. 10 and 30 ml bottles of Nick liquid are
highly unlikely to be on the market.
Highly unlikely to be on the market, and if they are, and this is where it all gets a bit ambiguous, that they haven't taken out the 2 milligram limit and 4 milligram concentration. They've taken out the 4 milligram concentration, but not the 2 milligram limit thing on here. But if they're all medicines, then theoretically, any sort of concentration is possible, provided they've been and gone an MA for it.
Yes, but with one overriding principle that applies in most of the EU countries, and certainly in the UK, and that is, how many aspirins can you buy in a pack? And you cannot buy any over-the-counter drug that will supply to you in one pack greater than the LDA 50 dose.
Yeah.
Which means that for e-juice at 36 milligram, I would be able to buy at the most 1.5 mils.
Yeah.
Because it's got an LDA 50 of 60 milligrams for a grown adult.
Right.
Anything more than that, they reckon, would kill you. It's actually not true, because if you swallowed it, you'd vomit it all straight back up. But never mind.
Yeah.
So a 30 ml bottle of 36 milligram ain't going to happen. Or 24, or 20, or 18, or 12, or anything that's useful, frankly.
Yeah.
So the likelihood is going to be silk cartomisers, isn't it?
That's what they're aiming to do. That's why, in my opinion, that's why the guy from E-Lights was so damn keen to see regulation and legislation, because it plays straight into his hands.
Of course it does. Now, we've said this all along, the winners are going to be the people who can afford the MAs, and then they can control the market. My personal view is that the market will be a lot smaller if this comes to pass, because they'll stop being as viable. The point that we've been trying to make to MEPs is that what makes this such a fantastic alternative to burning tobacco is the fact that you can tailor the experience, and you can do so cheaply, and you don't have to go to the chemist and all the rest of it. It needs to be easily available. It needs to be totally flexible, and at the moment that MAs start getting involved, that flexibility goes out the window.
Indeed.
Who's going to pay a £30,000 licence fee for a juice that only a few people buy?
Well, exactly right. And I can see Kat's typing, so we've got 1 minute 20 left.
We've got 1 minute 20 left. Okay. Yes. Okay. Well, we've kind of brought this to an end. It's probably worth then just using our last 1 minute, as it will be after the time I finish this sentence, to remind people what they could be doing. So I'm going to look at that camera over there, and I'm going to say, it ain't over yet. But if you're in any doubts about the way it's going, just remember what we've been discussing tonight. We've asserted a little bit of influence on a few MEPs. We've at least got their ear. We've at least got the subject under discussion. It ain't over yet, but this is the time to really exert as much pressure as you can. I've seen discussions going on the UK Vapers Forum about organising protests. and people getting banners and where to turn up, and you know, and I'm starting to think that we need something like this. We need some kind of guerrilla style flash mob attack somewhere, and so I'm watching that with interest. I'd certainly turn up if there's any way I'm able to do so. Because you know, get the mainstream television cameras down there. I've seen people talking about, you know, continually trying to raise this with the press. If enough people petition the television companies and the newspapers, then eventually they'll start to pick it up, I'm sure. I like the idea of a bunch of people turning up in Brussels, so, you know, we're still working on that. But in the meantime, don't let your MEPs off the hook. If they're giving you crap answers, go back at them, keep in their faces and tell them.
Tell them.
That's got to be about time, I would think. Overtime.
I'm going to get my backside kicked.
Get in. Tim, it's because you don't stop yakking, mate.
I'm sorry.
Guys, can I just say a huge thank you to both of you for joining me. I know it was all a bit impromptu, but I think that was something that needed some discussion. It needed a bit of airing. And to everybody that's been watching tonight, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week. Say bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Cloud9 Vaping, sponsors of Dave's Tackle Box.